All right. Hey, Jonah.
Yeah.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Brilliant, we're live. So, for those of you who are watching this online on ubuntuonair.com, there's this chat widget below the video. Just enter your favorite nickname, then you can join the conversation. We'll make sure to, and if you want to join the hangout, just let us know through the chat widget. Just let us know that you want to join, and you can bring up all the ideas and you might have. You pull up the agenda. We still have a couple of folks joining, so wait a little bit.
Oh man, it's been a while. Hey, Jonah.
Hey, Mike.
Like the whole team's coming back together.
I know.
Someone
It's
grab
like
George.
a boy band.
Okay, just posted the agenda on the IRC channel.
Which IRC channel are we in? Are we in the on-air channel?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, for those of you who are new to the entire discussion, a couple of folks, including Jono, posted blog entries with ideas on where the Ubuntu community as a whole, but also the people involved in leadership and governance could improve things. They sparked loads and loads of discussion on the Ubuntu community mailing list. It's brilliant. And now we're trying to distill this somewhat. The first attempt was a CC meeting we had just a week back, and now we're going to discuss what's on the agenda, proposals people might have. Do any of you have any more agenda items or things you wanted to discuss here? Any proposals or anything we could massage into work items?
I don't have any new business at this time.
Okay. Anyone else?
Nope.
Cool.
Don't have any.
So, at the end of the IRC meeting we had last week, I think it was, I put in an entry in the Etherpad to detail what exactly would go into an impact constitution that you brought up, Jono. Did you expand on that? Because I'm still not entirely clear what would be in that kind of document.
Yeah, sure. I mean, first of all, I'm not sure if I'm laggy because everyone's lip sync is a bit out for me. So let me know if I'm lagging, and I'll rejoin. I don't really know what an impact constitution is either. It was just an idea, really. Of it seems to me one of the challenges that we have, in a nutshell, is that I think that we sometimes. It's sometimes difficult to crisply articulate to non-Ubuntu people all the wonderful things that Ubuntu lets you do. And I don't think there should be a document that restricts us. Like the word constitution is a bit of a misnomer because the misnomer in the United States is a set of values that have generally not wanted to be compromised, and there's different amendments to kind of keep it modern. My thinking here is that this impact constitution, if you will, is primarily just a thing that says, if you're new to Ubuntu, these are all the awesome things that you can do with it. And what it does is it helps our community to remember all of those awesome things. Because I think that what's happening is that we're seeing a lot of bickering at one level, and we seem to forget like the bigger impact that Ubuntu has. And my point is that I don't think Canonical is an approval matrix for hardly any of those things. Just a couple of things. Like the vast majority of things that Ubuntu lets you do that's awesome, Canonical doesn't really play much of a role in. It's just the community that's maintaining those pieces. So I was thinking it might be useful for us to sit down and brainstorm, like what are the 20 major areas or the 10 major areas that Ubuntu lets you do great things. It could be in being creative, it could be science, it could be development, maybe humanitarian purposes. media production. I don't know. Does that make sense? I mean, this is just an idea that came to me at 11 o'clock at night, so it might not make any sense.
Not like it.
Yeah, I like the idea of just kind of making a set of not quite promises, but things that we expect to always let people do or empower people to do.
Yeah.
So like an empowerment agreement kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, I thought impact constitution was buzzworthy. Empowerment agreement.
Synergistic.
Enough now.
A leverage manifesto. So, yeah, I think that might be. I think it'd be fun putting that together, and it could be just a nice thing to, for us to use. Like the part of what gave me the idea was that when Tony Blair was running for government in the UK back in 1990, whatever, he made all of his MPs who worked for him carry around this little card that basically had like a set of promises that they were there to deliver on as part of a new Labour government, and it connected the day-to-day happenings with the bigger vision of what they were there to do. Now, whether they did that or not is a separate question, but I think the idea of maintaining that list that constantly on a day-to-day reminder reminds people what, in the same way that we have that with the COC helps to guide us in terms of the quality of conduct in the Ubuntu community. This is kind of like the quality of output.
Okay, so basically we've got to distill everything to a bumper sticker or less. And
no, I don't think it has to be that short.
No.
It can be, a page of bullet points, but each bullet point would need to be short.
I'd say let's go for the bumper sticker, because if we're going for a Blairite-style card to carry around, you're looking for half a bumper sticker. And if we can't communicate our points in a bumper sticker or less, we're hurting. We need to be able to communicate that simply.
I wouldn't agree with that. I mean, a bumper sticker is good for an overall mission, but it's not good for, like, this is a more detailed manifesto of things that you can do with Ubuntu. So, I think having a single line sentence that defines what we are would be useful. But this impact constitution or whatever we call it, I think would be a document. It would be something that would sit on community.ubuntu.com, and it would serve two purposes. It would remind our community on a day-to-day basis of what we can do with Ubuntu and why it's awesome. But also for new people, it can say, "You want to know what you can do with Ubuntu? Go and look at this page." So,
Jono, do you want to take an action item to start that, or at least create a document where people can start dropping in ideas of one-liners that they want included in it?
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll create a first cut of it, and then we can rip it apart and see what it looks like.
Make sure it's descriptive, not prescriptive.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, it's interesting. Somebody also asked for an updated mission statement. How connected do you think these two would be? That was one of the agenda items on the pad.
My inclination is that this is kind of it's the next layer down. Like, I don't know, I'm not an expert on this by any stretch, but it seems to me like up here we've got like a single line elevator pitch, which is the bumper sticker that Stephen's referring to. And then there's which is like a summarized version of a mission statement. Then we have a mission statement. And then I think we'd have this constitution piece, which is like all the cool stuff that you can do. I like the idea of a revised mission statement. I think the most important thing is that we build it together as a community.
Agreed, yeah.
That it's not just it's not something that like one or two people built. That doesn't mean that everybody gets what they want in there. But I think then everybody feels part of it. So,
as long as we make sure it describes rather than prescribes, we're good, and we make sure it's a living document that people can add to, then we're good to go, because admittedly, whoever thought we would have today Linux or BSD on the phone, and prior to 2004, no one thought we would get there, and yet here we are. So we just have to make sure we're not prescribing something that limits us. We're describing open vistas for the future.
And I would suggest that the mission statement really more gets to the values that we see in Ubuntu that we bring. Like, certainly ever since I've been involved in Ubuntu, to me the most important thing is that we're building an open platform that anybody can utilize. So that's like one layer, but then, you know, all the other stuff, like the fact that Ubuntu can run on phones and clouds and tablets and toasters and whatever else. I mean, that to me is probably a little too specific for the mission statement. Maybe the mission statement is just more about building an open platform that's collaboratively and community driven. Maybe that will be the layer. So.
Okay. I think I misunderstood what the mission statement was supposed to be about. It was more of a mission statement for the community. So, just looking at the Ubuntu.com page, we have our goals, or our philosophy, which says it's always going to be free of charge, blah, blah, blah. We believe that every user should blah, 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 blah. I think that's fine, and it's still accurate, just skimming through it. But, so what people were after was more of a mission statement for the community. What do we want? Like, where do we want to be involved? What's happening here?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't know who brought this up, so I don't know whose agenda item this was.
I mean, one thing that might be an interesting thing as an idea is maybe not wanting to give work to other people, but maybe this would be a good thing for the CC to create a first draft of in conjunction with, like, Mark is going to want to be involved in this. So maybe you know, Mark and the CC, and maybe Rick Spencer as well, as Rick plays such a key role in Ubuntu. Maybe that group could come up with just a mission that reflects Ubuntu today, and then open that up for comment to the wider community. Because if we just open up an Etherpad for a mission statement, it's going to get crazy pretty quickly, I suspect.
Yeah.
Amen and amen.
Get rid of Mir.
Yeah, would be happy to bring it up with the CC and Rick just see if they feel that the mission statement needs an update. Yeah.
Why don't we bring that up in emails so that it can go back and forth on emails over the holidays? We were already planning on having Rick on to talk to the CC after the new year. We can maybe arrange a time that both Rick and Mark are available.
Yeah. That makes sense.
I see people have filled out quite a bit on the leadership actions Etherpad, and unfortunately nobody took assignments for any of the work items, which is what I was kind of hoping we would be doing on this.
Where do we want to go to next? Which item do we want to take up next?
I don't know whether this is the right place to discuss this in this meeting. So tell me to shut up if you want. But it seems to me that the I know I wrote that blog post and it kicked off much of this. And I think the main thing, I mean, you know, I think the impact constitution and the mission statement, all that stuff is important. But to me, the main thing that we're missing now that I'd be interested to talk about, we didn't really touch on in that CC meeting, is I think the main thing that's missing right now, more than anything, is a sense of inspiration for our wider community. So The CC do excellent work and are all very, very good people. But it's the way I described it was kind of reactive. And that wasn't 100% accurate. I accept that in retrospect. But it's very administrative. It's very, a bit of paper shuffling from what I could see. But what I would love to see, now I'm a community member, or a non-canonical employee rather, is just more inspiration around all the cool things that we can do in the community. Like there is, if you look at 99% of things that you can potentially contribute to in terms of Ubuntu, you can do it without any kind of approvals or without treading on anybody else's toes. It's just a complete open community, and I'm tired of seeing all of this bickering about canonical getting in the way of things. And it feels to me like what we could do with doing is having more inspiration, so we can go out to new people in the community or existing people in the community and say, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we did this, or if we tried this, or we're missing this piece, and there's all the things we can do here. Like people often talk about how canonical isn't really focusing on the desktop anymore. Which, there's been less investment in the Ubuntu desktop because it's going into the convergent platform that will power the Ubuntu desktop in the future. But in the interim, that doesn't stop anybody else building an awesome desktop for Ubuntu in the archive, like we're seeing with the GNOME remix and everything. So I'd like to know what you folks think about, A, whether we need that level of inspiration, and B, how do you think we can do that? Because to me, the most logical place to do that is with our existing leadership. But maybe the CC and the TB are the wrong places. Maybe we need other people.
So I agree that we need it. I don't think our governance structure is the right place for that. I see governments as kind of the rear guard. We make sure that things don't fall apart so that the people on the front lines can keep, innovating and driving things forward.
Right.
So I think
the government's there to maintain the infrastructure and make sure that people have an environment that they can innovate in. Is that what you mean, Mike?
Right. And I think we need a different group to actually do the leadership and the inspiration part of things.
I don't know. I would rather see it as different roles. Like, Mike, you're a really good example. Like, you lead some teams, you're part of the governance structure, and you write inspirational blog posts. And you just do stuff. So that's different roles. So I wouldn't people who do something in Ubuntu are probably in the best position to write about what they're doing, write a good blog post with a couple of screenshots, or I don't know, go out and do something in their local team or something. I don't know if we should try to restrict this inspirational role or demand it from people who are merely in leadership or governance.
I totally agree that the same people can do both. And I think people involved in the government side of things should be inspiring and taking on leadership roles also. I just don't think that the actual organization of the governance, the councils themselves, I don't think it should be part of their mandate to do.
Now, from the local council perspective, we end up taking the position that the Ubuntu members are the kernels of activity in each of the local communities, the 179 odd ones across Earth. And we encourage the growth in the number of Ubuntu members on the planet. And from our perspective, we look to them to be those sources of inspiration. So from local council's perspective, that's why we ask during verification, do you have Ubuntu members in your community? We're not using it as a metric going, oh, you have too few or you have too many. We go, do you have any at all? Do you need help with cultivating that talent? And we try to drive things towards the folks who seek and obtain Ubuntu membership are the folks who drive our communities, and we want to encourage that. And we look to them for inspiration, and at least that's from local council's perspective. And that may not be from anywhere else's perspective, But at least that's how we're driving things through the verification process, where we're trying to encourage teams to do that, and just through other works where we cooperate with teams to help them get around problems, which we don't really talk about, but hey, it's what we do.
I think that's a good example, Stephen, is like, to me, the verification process is paperwork. I mean, it's important to a degree, but it's paperwork, and it's, you know, there are many Ubuntu Loco teams who do brilliant work that aren't verified. I mean, and so that stuff is important to a degree. I guess the question we have here is, do we look to our governance groups for leadership or for ensuring that the lights stay on? And I think this is really primarily to Mike's point, is that I think Mike's perspective is, you know, the governance is there primarily to maintain a community that is able to collaborate and to do interesting things, but the inspiration should potentially come from everybody. In my mind, I think we need to, the reason why I suggested that we reboot governance is that I believe that governance should be required to lead and inspire our community to do cool things as well. Because I think primarily we've been looking, frankly, to Canonical to do that. The inspiration traditionally has come from members of Canonical, and I don't think it needs to, because there's so many other things that we can do.
And
so the question,
that, I would beg to differ, because when it comes down to it in the end, I know Daniel got taken for a bit of a crazy sleigh ride in which I ended up leading a session during Ubuntu Online Summit, the most recent one, in which there were several community members. He was the only Canonical employee really present, and we ended up talking about localization, and that's a session that grew organically. I mostly was there as a backstop to say, okay, I'm here to help marshal what resources I can to make this happen, and we are working on that. And that's something that local council is doing. It's quiet, it's not sexy or cool or fun, but we are looking at localization of ISOs and trying to make that better for all of our communities. So that is something we are doing.
I'm not suggesting that the local council aren't doing things, and of course the local council are doing things without the aid of community members. What I'm talking about is whether these governance groups are inspiring people to participate and dream with Ubuntu.
The only way you can do that from a governance body perspective is to lead by example. Delegate, give others a challenge, and say, here you go. Let's see what you can do. I have 3 deputies for Ohio for leading it. I give them an idea. I say, please run with this. Let me see what you come up with. And I'm always surprised at what Svetlana, what James, what Unit 193, what they do. But that's where I say, you have the reins. I'm just hiding out in the background. And granted, that's one loco. It's one of the weirdest ones on the planet, I tell you. But sometimes you just have to lead by example, and if that's the only thing we can do, I think that may be a good step forward.
So leading by example, that would be an example, a way of being inspirational. I mean, I agree that we've got very diverse community, and it's amazing the things that you see happening. But I think there needs to be a more active. I'm just trying to find the word. A more active effort that comes from a group of leaders. I mean, there's been discussion here who should be this team of leaders. So I myself don't know if this has to be the governance boards or there needs to be a separate team. But I definitely agree with the fact that there should be a team of leaders that provide this inspiration, that essentially provide the source for teams to be creative and for people to get passionate about contributing to Ubuntu. I think we cannot just wait for these things to happen organically. I think we need to take action.
What we can do from the governance side is actively support those teams and individuals who are taking a leadership role. And if there's something that we can change about the infrastructure or process that will make it easier for them or help highlight them more, then that's something that we can do at the council level.
And the biggest issue of all is, for many teams, this would be regarded as taking a risk, doing something, hey, we've never done this before. We're off into new frontiers. For the governance body, we can provide examples, yes, but the biggest thing you can do when a team's engaging in a risk like that, doing something new, is we have to provide a safety net that they can fall back on and say, okay, I don't know what I'm doing, or I don't know what happened. Can you help me figure out where I'm going from here? That's probably the biggest role we have to do from the community governance perspective. This is one of those times where I wear how many hats, but if we don't provide the ability to fall back on something when someone takes a risk to try something,
I'm not quite sure if it's an actual risk to just try out something, just saying, okay, this is an experiment, I'm going to do this, or just talking about what you've been doing in the last time. That can also be inspirational, or just praise somebody else's work, or I don't know. I mean, maybe it would help to bring together a couple of examples, like I don't know, how to be an inspirational leader or something, just to give people an idea that, or let people who lead teams who are very active or who feel too busy to be more inspirational, to give them a bit of an idea, like this is something you could do.
I think the thing is that, like, thinking, like, in my mind, there are, like, you can see these different roles, particularly in companies, right? So, for example, most companies, or certainly startups, they have a mixture. Like, they'll have a founder, and then they'll have a management team. Like, they'll have VPs or senior VPs or whatever. And the founder, in almost all situations, has like incredible ideas and can dream about like what the organization can do, can think about like what resources and facilities are there in place today and how those could be used to do incredible things. And it's that person's imagination, it's that person's dreaming that helps to lift everybody to challenge themselves to do awesome things. And then the management layer basically figures out all of that craziness and translates it into something that teams can actually work on a day-to-day basis. Because I think most people can't inspire other people in that way. Like, it's a fairly unique trait in people. So it's not something that I'm expecting everybody to be able to do. Some people just can't do it because they're just not wired up that way. Like, Mark Shuttleworth is one of these people, as an example. Like, Mark, I think certainly the reason why I got into Ubuntu is that he got up at a conference and he said, you know, just imagine what we could do with Ubuntu. Imagine all the places, all the people we could touch, all the good that we could bring to the world through Ubuntu, and everybody can put their little bit in the wall to do that. And I think when we talk about leadership in Ubuntu, we're talking about management. We're talking about running teams and ensuring that mailing lists are healthy, and having structured meetings and work items and following up on those work items and burnout charts, and all that stuff is really important. I guess all I'm saying, and maybe I'm being unrealistic, is that I think if we had a bit more inspiration in addition to that, it will just create just a friendlier, happier place in Ubuntu. I think it will offset like the negative energy that some people like to bring on a repeated basis. And so maybe I'm being unrealistic by expecting our governance to do that, because maybe the governance are the equivalent of the VPs in my example, is that they're the people who, to Mike's point, create a productive, predictable, collaborative environment. Maybe we identify our inspirational leaders elsewhere. Maybe they're not in governance. Maybe they're running loco teams or parts of loco teams. I don't know.
So there is already an Ubuntu leadership program that was dormant for a while, and I know Svetlana's taken it up. And I've talked multiple times about getting active in that and helping with that, and I know I haven't. And really, I don't know what exactly you need in terms of help to get that up and running right now. So, Svetlana, are you able to kind of get us all up to date on what's going on with that and what you need?
Yeah, we're thinking about doing a mentoring program, but I think we want to launch this next year, like early January or early February. I mean, late January, early February. and I think we're thinking about doing one-to-one leadership training, and we really haven't decided on how to do anything yet, but I just like sent out the base idea, which I'm going to link to that email. And I think we should have members of the local council and the community council to help us like train the leaders, so we can have inspirational leaders along with like our leaders.
So is part of the scope of this also to try and spread awareness of what these people are doing and how other people can start doing the same thing?
Yes, exactly that.
Okay, then that sounds like this is a good place to focus on getting that new leadership community going.
Yeah, I think it would be the best place to start it.
So how can people get involved? I know I've already joined the Launchpad team for that. Is there like a roadmap doc, something that's being worked on?
I think we didn't start one, but I can make an action item for myself to start that roadmap for you.
Okay. Yeah, let's do that, and then we can start adding things to it as people join on.
I will just note briefly for the folks not following the IRC channel, colloquy between myself and Michael Hall, in which I stated leadership does not necessarily equal management. Management is the paper shuffling, to which Michael responded, there's quite a bit of overlap, though, to which then I offer the rejoinder that yes, but the Venn diagram isn't totally congruent between the two. So if you wanted to speak to that, Michael, by all means.
Basically, to boil it down to layman's terms, good leadership requires some amount of management, but it's not all management. Yeah. Was basically the conversation.
Yeah.
I think leadership is channeling channeling hard and soft resources to a successful conclusion, and you can't do that without management. You have to be able to manage those resources and those people effectively to do that. But leadership is also about giving a direction that we will all going. Like, there are lots of managers who don't actually lead; they just follow instructions. But those are primarily middle managers. So I'd say it's a bit of both. It is, you can be a manager but not a leader, but you can't be a leader and not a manager.
Okay.
But that's semantics. So.
And can we maybe at some stage talk about what we expect from those inspirational leaders? I mean, part of the question we're talking about here is like, who do we expect to be inspiring? Should it be the CC? Should it be the TB? Who else should be inspiring? But maybe you could talk also a bit about what we expect to happen.
Well, certainly from my perspective, what we'd expect from those inspirational leaders is, I think primarily, and this is going to sound really cheesy, but is to just have those people encourage our community to dream a little bit about what we can do. Because right now, Ubuntu is a thing that you can install on a desktop and on a phone and on a tablet and on a cloud and stuff like that, and it lets you do lots of cool things. But certainly from my perspective, Ubuntu is much more than just software. It's a philosophy, and it's a movement, and it's frankly, it's more than software. It's about breaking down the digital divide, and it's about giving people the ability to educate themselves and to create technology and to create art. And I think ideally, like, our inspirational leaders, in my mind, when I've seen people who have inspired me, and again, Mark is a good example of this, he's got this amazing ability to paint a picture of a world where you feel you can help us get to that world. Like he sells you on a vision, but this isn't like, you know, we're gonna fly to Mars on a bottle of Coca-Cola. It's you know, this is a vision of the future that we all want, that we think is good, and we can all play a part in helping us to get there. And in my mind, like, that's what a great inspirational leader does, is that it helps you think more broadly in terms of what we can do. And that's the piece that I think the best inspirational leader in Ubuntu is Mark, without a shadow of a doubt, because he founded it and he's just wired up that way. But he's really busy. So maybe as a frame of reference, as a comparison, is somebody like a Mark Shuttleworth. Those kind of inspirational blog posts and talks at conferences, you know, somebody getting up there and you know, not delving into the specific details of like which work items do we need and how we're going to do that. I don't think that's the purpose of an inspirational leader. It's the where do we want Ubuntu to be in 5 years? Like, what do we want it to look like? What good can we do to the world? And there's not going to be that many people. The more I'm thinking about this, the more I'm thinking that there's not that many people who can do this. And this is going to be less about trying to train people in that, because I don't think we can train people in that, but it's more about hand-picking people and encouraging them to do more of that kind of stuff. Because there'll be a lot of people who think they're inspirational, but they're actually not.
And quite a few that are the opposite.
Yeah, yeah. So in terms of a follow-up, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The more I'm thinking about it, the more I'm thinking that this is. I don't think this is something we can create. I think it's something that will. I think we can create a general air of inspiration. Like, I think it would be useful for us to maybe, instead of finding like a very, very inspirational Mark Shuttleworth type figure, maybe what we do instead is that we focus more on encouraging our community to share and like celebrate the great things that Ubuntu lets you do, and the great elements of being part of the community. Because I think we can all talk about that. To Stephen's point, we can all lead by example with that. We can all of us have got great stories about what Ubuntu's done for us and how it's empowered us to do different things. And maybe that's more of what we need. Because I just like to amplify the good as opposed to the negative that we see. That thread on that mailing list was a good example of that. Just a constant barrage of negative, but this and but that and but this and but that, and it's like, you know, let's stop being so pessimistic. You know, let's focus on the great things that we can do. Let's not ignore the problems, but let's focus on the good stuff.
So one quick thought on that. One thing we can do to try and get those inspirational people out more and in view more is to use the community donations money to send them to different events or local teams to give those kinds of presentations. Yeah. I know we haven't had a lot of people using that money, and most of it's gone towards engineering-related things. But if somebody, like if you've got a local event coming up and you want a specific person to present on a specific topic, you can encourage them to go fill out this form and get, you know, travel expenses paid for so that they can attend. And I think if we have local teams asking for the people that they see as inspirational leaders, that will give us the organic growth in that we're looking for.
Yeah, I think so.
As silly as this will sound, if we could have, you know, a sponsored episode of Hack 5 or another show just for 10 minutes to show us something concrete you can do with Snappy, that would go a long way beyond the blog posts that show you how to boot it up. I booted it up, I played with it, I'm still not sure what to do with it, but something like that would push us a heck of a way forward.
So what was that you mentioned, Hack 5?
Yeah, hack5.tv. They're a show produced by Revision 3, which is out in the Bay Area. So it's actually up Jono's way.
Okay.
relatively speaking.
Yeah.
So one thing that I would really like to have this focus on is finding inspirational leaders that are not also canonical employees.
Yeah.
And I think we really currently have a lack of people that are non-employees that are getting the kind of attention that we want people to be getting. And I know, unfortunately, right now with Snappy being so new, all of the experts are the people who actually worked on building it. But for a bunch of other topics, we could easily send like community core app developers around to their local communities or neighboring countries' local teams to give talks on app development and all kinds of other topics that we have a lot of community talent and knowledge in.
I really like the idea of, I can't remember who brought it up, maybe it was John. The more people tell their story, like what Ubuntu means to them, what they did with it, what new they learned, which people they got in touch with, maybe it would be good to share more of those stories and ask people for their stories. Maybe that would help as well.
I think so. I mean, I think that this is one of the things that I tried over and over again with loco teams, was to encourage people when people have meetings to write like a blog post or a summary of that meeting with lots of pictures of people hanging out and having fun. And certainly, not wishing to speak for other people, but certainly for myself, when I see those posts on Planet Ubuntu as an example, it's so cool to see that. It's so motivational to see people all stood together, hanging out and having fun with Ubuntu t-shirts on and whatever else. So, maybe what our governance can help with is encouraging their respective communities to pull out the good stuff that's happening in that world. So using the local council as an example, as we've got Stephen here, maybe one element here could be encouraging loco teams and supporting loco teams that when they meet together and they have a meeting, that they do that they pull out like those cool takeaways that maybe provide some support and guidance about, okay, how do you record a presentation and put it up on YouTube and then put that into your blog post. I know that that's one thing that, for example, Michael and the other guys on the community team at Canonical have been doing a really nice job of with the apps story, is really highlighting really neat apps that are being built. They may be early in their development, but it shows like the dynamism of what's happening. So maybe that will be a productive thing that we could start with, is encouraging people, our governments, to help with that.
Well, one thing we do from the verification perspective, and I know we've now got 2 applications for Tuesday's meeting. Before I get too far along, it's hak5.org, not hak5.tv. It's hak5.org. But just to correct myself, 2 of the things that come up as we consider a verification application, first is, do you have your online resources set up? First, do you actually have a website for your team? We actually ask, do you have that? And we want to be sure that that happens. Second thing is, we actually require people to tell us. But it's not that onerous of a requirement, and it is, tell us what's going on. What's the good? What's the bad? Where do you need help? And we try to emphasize to folks, it's not the Spanish Inquisition. No Monty Python characters are going to pop up, but at least tell us what's good. And normally, every verification wiki page we get, we see that story. We've just been derelict in writing blog posts to share them with the rest of Planet, but they're there. We know the stories are there. We just need to share them better, and we've been trying to encourage that.
All right, so we've got about 15 minutes left. This were a UOS session. This would be the time we start actually trying to make concrete work items and assign them. I know we've got a couple things on the Etherpad right now that are assigned. The one for Jono to start the impact statement. We discussed Svetlana starting a roadmap for Ubuntu leadership, which is not on there yet. And then one thing that I took a work item for yesterday was to start a conversation inside Canonical and try and get people to contact local communities and teams when they're going to be in an area for an event that people can attend. So that's 3 concrete things right now that we can start on. But there's still a whole lot more on this Etherpad that's unassigned. So if you guys can look through that and see if there's something that you think you can do and are willing to do. I'd like to get as many of these assigned as possible, because saying or identifying the problem and coming up with ideas for solutions is great, but if nobody's actually going to implement them, then it's pretty useless.
So there's something on here about getting more data about how some of the parts of our community work. There's something about amending community Ubuntu com. I think I'm just going to add a note here and ask people to pile bugs on the project in Launchpad so we know what exactly they want.
So do you know what kind of data this is talking about? Like participation data to show how active we are?
Find contribution figures for support venues and possible reasons behind increases, decreases. Find contribution figures for packaging, etc. Find figures for Ubuntu member increases, decreases. Find figures for what's going on with locals.
That's incredibly broad. What metrics are we looking for on the loco side?
I was just reading out what was put there. I think it's still up for discussion. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's important, and it would be good to have more of these numbers. I think at the same time we should already start fixing a few things, so let's not get blocked on getting data.
Yeah, I'm not sure that that's actually going to solve the problem statement listed. And I've already got some of the numbers. Like I've got some historical Ubuntu membership numbers, and you can pull stats from Local Team Portal and Summit to get some idea of what's been going on there.
Yeah. I mean, something for find figures for what's going on with locos. Again, I'd need that narrowed down. We can do that, but we need to know what specifically we're looking for. We can definitely do outreach. We've gone up to 7 members so that we're actually have an odd number for once. And so we can make short order of this, but we would still need to know what are we looking for. It's not like we haven't done a data research project before.
Yeah, I'm just not sure that there's actually a problem there that's going to be solved by pulling these numbers. I mean, I can share what I've currently got. It's nothing surprising, and it's nothing we didn't already know.
Yeah.
As to the problem statement, as for people are leading innovation with Ubuntu the code, but not in Ubuntu the realm, the project. With the proposed solution, Local Council has a meeting Tuesday. Could somebody write that up and send it to the Local Council for consideration? And let us at least review it?
Sorry, I didn't quite understand. Send what to the local council?
That proposed solution, encourage locals to expand beyond the OS-focused events to include things like robotic operating system, designers, Docker. If someone could flesh that out a little more, we'll gladly look at it.
Isn't this something that the local council should be thinking about?
We didn't originate the idea.
The local council is the prescribed local.
So,
right within the wheelhouse of what the local council could do.
But that's something where that's not our idea originally, so we just need a little bit more behind it. What was whoever came up with those bullet points coming from, so we can appreciate it and not go madly off in all directions and get tied up for 6 months.
I think that was a general sentiment and a general I don't think it was so much of an idea, it was more of an observation from a group of people that Ubuntu is being utilized as an ingredient in many places outside of Ubuntu, but it's not. But the innovation is not happening within the Ubuntu community. Now, if there is an assertion that the local teams can help with that problem, in my mind, I think everybody should be able to share ideas on this, but I think the local council, it would be worthwhile for the local council to get together and then just take that as a challenge. Like, what can we do to come up with and think of ways in which we can help our slice of the community with that.
Okay. So, Stephen, can we just have this added to the local council agenda to talk about?
Yeah, that would be the best thing.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, the local council are better placed than most. Like, the local council are the experts in the local community to offer a really insightful opinion on this, I think.
Yeah. And then there's also going to be a lot of other local folks in the meeting, so I might get a bunch of ideas out of it.
Adding it to our agenda now.
Brilliant.
Cool.
All right. The one above it really doesn't have anything but the problem statement. No clear delineation between canonical and community-led projects.
I personally don't know if this is going to solve any problems. Like,
I'm not even convinced that this is a problem.
Yeah, I agree. I mean,
one thing that might...
Sorry,
go ahead, Daniel.
No, I just wanted to quickly say that if I'm interested in contributing it to a project, it's because I like what the project is doing, and not so much who else is contributing.
I think there is something to be said, though, about. I think one of the tenets of open source is that generally people who don't feel like they can be in a position to share in the direction of a project, generally they don't want to participate, or at some point they will get frustrated because they can't participate. So one thing that might be, we've seen this in Ubuntu over the years, and you can see this with other projects as well. It might be useful to identify the projects that are being formally led by internal canonical teams. So because I don't think that will be, I think the primary function of having that clarified will be, it'll make it clear just how much isn't driven by only internal canonical teams. Like, certainly from my perspective, Unity 8, it's basically led by canonical. Anyone can contribute as a software developer, as a translator, and many other periphery functions. But the decisions on what's going on Unity 8 are primarily made internally, and I think that's the right decision, personally. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I think setting that clarity might be useful, because what I'd hate to see is people join the Unity 8 team with the expectation that they will be able to play that leadership position, whereas in reality it's very, very unlikely that that's going to happen. But it'll outline all the many places where canonical internally doesn't lead things.
Right, it might help to set some expectations or explain what's happening, but I totally wouldn't rule out, like, if somebody came up and said, look, I have this great idea, here's a feature I would like to add it, or that could happen in Unity 8. It's not like
Yeah, I mean, there's people you see. I've been resharing, videos on Google Plus where people are playing with Unity 8, and that's the kind of thing that we really should be encouraging and trying to get people to work more with those upstream projects and developers instead of saying, this is canonical led. Don't try and
but
innovate.
I don't know.
That my concern is if we do this, that it's going to send a message that these are projects where we don't want you involved. And that's not a message I want to send.
But I think that, honestly, in terms of the leadership of those projects, it's not that we don't want the community involved, it's that the defined leaders are people who work at Canonical. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think part of the problem that we've got is that the expectations aren't clear. I don't think there's anything wrong with us going out and saying, at least from my perspective, Unity 8 is something where everybody's welcome to come in and share ideas, and if you build a piece of code that fits within the roadmap that we've defined moving forward, and it's complementary to that roadmap, that's great. But what worries me is that if somebody sits down and thinks of the project that you can throw things into it and like you can with other desktops, that what's going to happen is someone's going to spend a lot of time building a chunk of code that ultimately doesn't fit quite within that roadmap, and then they get demotivated because they spend a ton of time on code that won't land.
But is that really different from what other desktops do? I mean, can you just come into KDE and throw in some new features that nobody's talked about and maybe the people leading the project don't want?
No, but the difference with KDE is that all of the planning and the development is done transparently. That doesn't happen with Unity. With Unity, a huge chunk of the planning and development is done in private meetings with a design team. And I don't think there's anything
that I would like to change.
I mean, I just don't think it's going to change. I mean, I'd prefer if it was completely open, but I just think we should be honest with the environment that we work in. Not honest that people are being dishonest. I just mean, we should just set expectations. So
I think it would help maybe for those projects to, instead of just saying these are canonical led, to detail who is leading them, both in terms of engineering and design, so that if somebody wants to get involved with making that roadmap, they know who they need to go to and talk to. Yeah,
exactly. And I think, because in my mind, there's a very, very limited number of projects that meet that. Like Unity is one, Mir is one, Juju is one. I don't know about Snappy, but with those three projects, they're very much led by a set of people defined by Canonical, and that's fine. But the other 99.8% of things in Ubuntu do not have those restrictions applied. But the theme that we often see in the community is that everything is controlled by Canonical, and that's the reason why I think it's maybe important that we clarify that. I mean, I'd be happy to put together.
Where would we do this? Like, well, if we got all this information together, where's a good place that we can host that?
Community.ubuntu.com, maybe?
Nah, because it's not really about community. It's about engineering projects.
But it relates to where the community can participate.
Is any of the Unity 8 stuff going to live on Unity Ubuntu.com? Because they have a Get Involved page, for example.
Yeah, we can put it on there for Unity 8. We could probably put Mir on there too, because it doesn't have a dedicated site.
And there, the teams could then also explain, like, these are our usual meeting times. We use this bug tracker, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. Use this mailing list.
I think you could potentially even just have one page that just says, it could be a page about essentially canonical. It could be about, community.ubuntu.com/canonical projects as an example. And maybe there what we do is we say, Canonical are the primary maintainers of these things, right? And then what we do is we say, we just explain how this works. So we can make it clear that, in all of these projects, QA, translations, testing, ideas for what these things can do are all welcome. But we can make it clear that the primary decision making behind the strategic direction of those projects is made by Canonical. People can feed into sharing ideas and that at the UOS and things like that, but the primary decision making is made by Canonical. It's going to be initially a tough pill to swallow for some people, but I think that it will then set very clear expectations that anything on that page that applies to, but everything else is open book. Just an idea.
Wasn't Elizabeth Crumbach-Joseph looking for who was the community phone person recently? We could use something like this.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to go. I'd be happy to write a first draft of that page if you know, in the interest of giving ideas and providing accountability.
Cool.
Well, that page isn't going to be really a big thing. If you can do start the page for the impact constitution, that would be great.
Yeah, no problem. All right, I gotta go. Thanks everyone, and thank you for coordinating the hangout.
Thanks, Jono.
Thanks a lot, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye, everyone.